Hey everybody, it's a hot Monday in July here in the DC area, and that means it's time for another hot topic about associations. Today's topic is blended data and your association. And we have a special guest, Rob Miller from Gravitate Solutions, and he's going to talk a little bit about their Nucleus tool. Also, we love the fact that Gravitate Solutions is a Rogue Tulips partner. As always, chatting with Agnes and Cecilia is brought to you by Rogue Tulips 501c Consulting and Association Management Services. You can check us out at roguetulips.com. We're also a proud supporter of the 501c League, which is a virtual membership organization for anyone within the 501c community and the people who love them. So we're here today to stop sharing my screen, there we go, hit the big red button, Cecilia. There you go. Hey, Rob, thanks for joining us today. And as always, we're here with our lovely co-host, Agnes. Agnes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Cecilia, and thank you, Rob, for joining us. I'm Agnes Amos Coleman. I'm an author and a consultant with Rogue Tulip. Over to you, Cecilia.
Thanks, Agnes. And as always, I am Cecilia Supp. I'm the principal and founder of Rogue Tulips and a longtime consultant. And we're here with our friend Rob Miller from Gravitate. So Rob, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Gravitate Solutions.
Sure. So let's see. I'm a longtime association professional. I have worked for 2 associations. Most recently, I was at an organization called 340B Health, and we were an association of about 1,400 organizations. Prior to that, I started 4 different software companies, 3 which were quite successful, 1 which was a total failure, which is not unusual for anyone who's been an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And was very proud that we created a product called NetForum, which is still one of the leading AMS products that now is owned by Community Brands. Wow. So that's kind of my background. And so while I was working at 340B Health, I started working with this wonderful tool called Nucleus, which is a data analytics tool created by Gravitate Solutions. And they asked me to join them in March, where I have been ever since. So that's kind of my quick background.
That's great. Thanks, Rob. And yeah, I think we've all heard of NetForum, even if we haven't used it. And we've all heard of Community Brands because that's been part of the merger and acquisition trend that's been going on in associations. So what else does Gravitate do? Now, we know about the Nucleus tool, and we want to talk a little bit about Nucleus, but what else does Gravitate Solutions offer its clients?
Well, actually, one of the reasons that I joined Gravitate is the CEO there, Tim Ward, was my old business partner when we built NetForum. And so Gravitate's been in business about 12 years. And they have been traditionally a software services company doing a lot of work for NetForum clients, doing upgrades, web enhancements, mobile connections, lots of integrations. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, they also started doing something similar for Salesforce, because as you know, there's several AMS solutions on top of the Salesforce platform.
Right.
And so Gravitate got a number of its staff certified in Salesforce, and so we've done a number of nimble implementations. I think we've done 4 or 5 of them now, but we're doing lots of little odds and ends as well with the Salesforce platform. So those are the other things we do. So we implement AMS software, but we also do all the things around it, like integrations, write reports, do training, all the things that you would expect a technology company to do in the association space.
Wow, that's really broad. That's great. But I say it's broad, but it's also very focused on data. And that's what we're here to talk about today, which is blended data. So we understand the concept of blended data, Rob, but could you please explain it for the audience?
Now, wouldn't you rather talk about something like travel or single watch or something like that?
That's right. Rob, when Rob and I were prepping last week, it turns out we have visited a lot of the same European cities. And so we were trading some war stories. I think we're starting to bore Shepherd a little bit. But Rob's recently back from Scotland, specifically the Edinburgh area. And so we were talking single malt scotch in the high street. So yeah, it would be way more fun. And especially Agnes, because Agnes is an international citizen. I mean, she has lived all over the world, right, Agnes?
That's very true. And I grew up in England, and I'm very familiar with Edinburgh. So very much so.
Place.
Yes.
Well, and actually kind of bring in the travel into the topic of blended data. When you look at the United Kingdom is a blended country because the United Kingdom is Britain, Wales, and Scotland, and Ireland.
That's very true.
That is a blended country. And so when you think about the fact that all of these different cultures within these different countries in the UK, oh, and let's not forget Wales. Everybody always forgets the Welsh.
Oh, I think you said it.
You said it.
But we especially love Ian Grufford. Thanks for so when you bring them all together, though, they blend into one country, but each one is unique and different. And so that's a great way to think about blended data, which I think kind of sets a foundation for people who maybe don't understand what it is, or maybe who don't work with data directly, because keeping in mind, we all use data even unconsciously. So, you know, for example, you might be a meetings person and you're looking at your sales and you're looking at registration and things like that, but you necessarily think of it as data and then blending that in with maybe a member satisfaction survey. And how is that membership satisfaction survey informing your data from your meeting? So, and Agnes, you might have a comment about that before we throw it back to Rob, because you have a lot of experience in international conferences.
Absolutely. I mean, blended data is so vital in how we do business, not even just for 501c, I might add, even with global conglomerate, you find that the data, we use blended data to enhance and improve our bottom line. Really, it's kind of that top-down approach and bottom-up approach. You need it to inform what the business is doing. You need it to inform what the customers are saying about your business.
Right.
You need it to inform what the customers are saying, how your business is doing, but how your stakeholders are going to react. So I think it's very, very broad. And I'm very interested in what Rob is going to share with us today and how his business and his organization can not only just help 501c succeed, but also far beyond 501c, because I think that it's a very interesting topic that we need as professionals for professional development, because we need this to help us do our job better, but also for businesses, how can we make it successful?
That's great. That's great lead in. So Rob, talk a little bit about Gravitate's attitude about blended data and how you define it.
Well, sure. Well, the first thing I think that both of you would find interesting, and the listeners as well, is that we did a little research against all of our clients that are running our Nucleus platform, and we found that only 20% of their data comes from their AMS. And which might be a bit of a shock to you and to everyone else. It was a big surprise to me. And in fact, my old organization, 340B Health, the AMS was less than 5% of the data.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that your data in your email marketing tool, your data in your Google Analytics, your data in your social community, these systems, the data is growing in leaps and bounds much faster than the data that's growing in your AMS. So if you're only analyzing the data in your AMS, you're really missing out on a lot of activity that's going on in your association. And that's where the value of blending comes in. The concept is that you take these systems and then you pull all that data into one place. And in our case, we put it in the Nucleus database. We call that our data lake, and we connect all that together. And the best way, of course, is by some kind of common ID. The next best is maybe by an email address, and the third best would be, using some type of, first name, last name, zip code. However far you need to go down until you feel that you've gotten a pretty precise level. But what you ultimately want to do is you want to create, in a sense, one large, very long, logical record that would have a column for every field that's in your AMS, in your e-marketing, in your community, in your LMS, in your survey tool, whatever systems you want to blend together. And so that way, then when you have that, you then can use any one of those columns as a filter to look at that data. And so suddenly you have all this information coming from all these various places.
And as an aside, for our international audience, because we have people outside the US who use this for professional development, we've been throwing out some acronyms. An AMS is an association management system, and an LMS is a learning management system, which is basically a platform for taking a webinar and getting a certificate and maybe taking a quiz. So another thing you mentioned, Rob, which I find fascinating, I've had several conversations with Shepard about it, is the concept of the data lake. Can you talk a little bit about the data lake concept?
Well, most of us have experience with relational databases, transactional databases that are in your association management system or in your customer relationship management system, your CRM. They're generally that type of system, and they're very good at storing data and keeping it very separated and very organized and that kind of thing. What they're not particularly good at doing is providing that data back to you really fast. And so what a data lake allows you to do is it allows you to take data that doesn't really go together, such as data in your AMS or data in your learning management system, and put that data in that data lake in either a structured or unstructured format. Some of it could be like video and that type of thing. And then these tools allow you to pull that data out extremely fast. And so you can get sub-second response time pulling the data back out. But the concept of the data lake, and the reason why it's called a data lake is because it's literally where all your data goes. I think the term that people used to use for that was a data warehouse. But that the technology has really improved since the initial data warehouses to where it deals with unlike data much better than the old data warehouse used to.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, because I think of a data warehouse now more as a tool as opposed to a data lake, where a data lake is kind of like dive in and look for some answers because they're all here. But I think a data warehouse, that's really something I think more healthcare groups are getting into, because they're really having to prove quality outcomes and quality patient experience. The patient-centered approach needs to be documented, and it's a way for people to share ideas and share data and have better data and actually get paid more quickly by CMS if you're part of a qualified data warehouse. So to me, that's more of a tool at this point as opposed to your data lake. And Rob, you mentioned unstructured data. Now, I think we all know what structured data is. We're looking at the AMS or maybe an Excel sheet or something like that, or a member survey, but could you give some examples of unstructured data?
Well, the first is like video. Another type of data would be like in your survey, you have people who type lots of answers. And so that it doesn't have IDs and things like that. So that would be data that you would have to use some natural language processing tool to be able to interpret. At 340B Health, we were using semantic analysis to determine, based on what people were saying in their social community, whether they were happy or sad, or they were talking about certain topics that might have been useful to point us towards what kind of webinars they might be interested in. So that type of data gets handled very well in a data lake, and does not work at all in a transactional system to evaluate. So, and I liked your analysis, or your analogy of it was more like a tool than the data lake, because I think you're right, where the data warehouse, the data and the software itself are so much more tightly bound. So if you want to change the data warehouse, you really have to change the software. So that's a little problematic. Whereas with the data lake, it's so much more flexible. And so then your tools you place on top of that can go at the data however you want.
That's and I think that's real. Just trying to check something. Sorry, guys. All right. Oh, we only have a minute and a half left. That's what I was trying to check. I mean, this has been such a great conversation so far. So as we begin to wrap this up, Agnes, did you have any questions or comments for Rob?
Sure, Rob. You know, what I'm interested in is we have global audience that are watching us, and not only that, they all include 501c and beyond. What value would you say that your organization, through this blended data, can bring for them who are looking into using your service? I know we've only got a few minutes, but if any of our audience wanted to, you know, use your service, what value, what benefits would it offer them? Because with the ultimate view of the membership in mind, and I'd like you just to share that with us in a few seconds.
Yeah, because we're
Sure, I mean, that's a great question, and I think that, you know, once you get data in a data lake, obviously what matters is what kind of insights you can get out of it.
Mm.
And for us, say my old organization, we were able to track member engagement, because now that you have all the activity from all your different solutions in one place, you can determine what somebody is really doing.
Mm.
So it was easy for us to determine who our least engaged members were, which obviously those are your retention targets. We could see who our most engaged non-members were, clearly our targets for acquisition. So those are simple examples of things that when you have all this data together and you start asking questions and start assigning values to their activity, that you really can achieve that you couldn't before. And there's lots of other examples. Another one's like total member value. You know, when you go to try and get someone to renew, if you can tell them all the various things that they did with your organization and show some value against each one of those, it might make your job convincing them to stay as a member much better. So those are just a few examples.
That's a great question, Agnes. And I'm sorry we have to end our conversation. It's time for us to wrap up for this week. We'll definitely have Rob back because we've just skimmed the surface of the data lake, I think. But Rob, really quickly, is there a website people can visit to learn more about the Nucleus tool and how it supports blended data?
Yeah, I would recommend you go to www.gravitateSolutions.com.
And you can find it there. You can also find on their blog, a cross-posted blog that we did jointly on blended data and how it helps break down silos within organizations. You can find it at gravitatesolutions.com blog, or you can find it on Fresh Blooms at roguetulips.com. So we want to thank you again for joining us today, Rob. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great conversation. We definitely will have you back to dig into this some more. And like Agnes and I say, take 15 minutes and chat with somebody because you just might learn something. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.